What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Glass and Out podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wilbur, founder of the Coaches Site. Listen, before we jump into my conversation with Garrett Raboin, head coach of the Augustana Vikings, I just want to remind you to like and subscribe below. It helps other coaches discover the show. Also, Garrett's going to be a presenter at the College Hockey Inc. Virtual Coaches Clinic, which we are hosting from October 17th to 21st. It's only available for members of the Coaches Site. But the good news is if you don't have a membership, if you go to the Coaches Site.com right now, you can save $50 on the cost of an annual subscription. And that subscription is going to get you access to the College Hockey Inc. Virtual Coaches Clinic. It's going to get you access to our Global Skills Showcase, another virtual event that we host in February, along with all the content that's available on the Coaches Site. So you don't want to miss that. Again, go to the coachessite.com right now, save $50 on your membership. And with that, on to my conversation with Garrett Raboin. Garrett, how's it going?
It's going well, guys. Thanks for having me.
When was the last time you were on the ice?
I was on the ice 2 days ago. So we have two athletes on campus right now. They'll be the first ever Vikings hockey players, and they're just they have a regular class load. They're just like all the other students on campus, and then we'll practice and they'll train all year and then be part of our group in the fall of 23 as we get this thing going here.
So what did the practice plan look like?
You know what? With two players on the ice,
it's a lot of reps.
It's a lot of reps. So we gave them a break. I got involved a little bit and got my workout in. But it was fun to be out on the ice. You know, it's you feel just some sort of normalcy as a coach to be skating around and you know, the two guys we have on campus are tremendous young men, and just to see them and their desire to get better and just makes you feel really good about our future here. And those first two building blocks are in place, and we're just excited.
So, I mean, I don't think you could get more in on the ground floor than these two young men. So when you're out on the ice and just having those conversations through practice, like, do they share kind of, I mean, obviously you have your vision for the program, but I would think that it's an opportunity for them to kind of, you know, share where they hope things land heading into next year.
No, and that's part of the story with these two guys, and they were hand chosen by myself and Andy Piscetto, my assistant coach. And the main thing was they had to be leaders, they had to be believers, and they had to be guys that were going to be a part of messaging to recruits and those that are incoming this upcoming summer. What we're trying to do here. We got to make sure that, you know, there's one thing when you're hosting a visit, how a recruit is in front of a coach, but how a recruit conducts himself in front of his peers is a whole nother thing sometimes. So they're going to be a big part of our whole philosophy and our process as we recruit our team and our culture. And just really fortunate that they were two guys that wanted to be a part of it, and it wasn't, you know, they saw it as an opportunity. And you know, the path forward, it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, and you know, although it's a little different, we're anxious to continue to move forward.
So what does that team building process look like? And I look back at, say, ASU and Penn State. They both had the benefits of having club hockey teams, so there was a bit of a base there to transition with in terms of, you know, already having some players that could come into the program. You know, effectively you're starting with a blank canvas. How do you build that program and you know, specifically from the perspective of making sure that, you know, you're not recruiting a whole new roster every 4 years, that you kind of spread things out and you've got a little bit of depth amongst the age groups? Yeah,
and it's the right time. I think we're fortunate enough, you know, and I'm speaking in terms of building a program right now, that we do have the transfer portal to tier some of those scholarships. So we have seniors, juniors, sophomores, and then freshmen. And the big thing is we don't know who those players are going to be yet. You know, we have to wait till all these other teams' seasons conclude and guys start hopping in the portal, what it even looks like. But for us, as we put a plan together, the premium is going to be on the type of kid. And that's the most important part for us talk to a lot of people, talk to, the coaches at ASU and at Penn State and at St. Thomas. And that's one of the consistent themes is they talk about, well, above all else, you got to be strong in what you want your culture to look like. And culture is a term you hear so often, one of the most popular words used in sports, but there's something to it. And for me, it's how people connect. It's how people connect with me and my staff, but how people connect with one another, and how they share that vision for where this program should go, and how we're going to get it there. I'm excited to go, go dive into the portal a little bit and get to know some of these kids. But we have a whole year to do a real good job in junior hockey, recruiting our first year's team and starting to build out our list a little bit. And that's already started. We're excited about some of the guys that have hopped on board. And we're, looking forward to the next domino falling.
So one of those players is a goaltender, Christian Mans. And, I would suspect just based on his pedigree and the success that he had last year, I mean, that's a pretty big box to check with a really high-end goaltender. I'm always curious at the NCAA level where, while there is the portal, you don't have the benefit of trading players. There's limits in terms of how many times you can have a player on campus, how many face-to-face interactions you can have. At what point as a coach do you know that, okay, like I'm all in on this player, we're ready to offer him? Is that just purely a gut feel, or are there other factors that play into that?
Well, I got to be careful because I can't, with the NCAA rules, I can't comment on any particular prospect or anything like that.
Got it. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I can speak to our process, and I think it's an intuition within yourself that you develop through time. Fortunate enough over the last 10 years to work with some of the best in college hockey. Obviously, Bob Motzko, having played for him, having worked underneath him at two different universities, and really being fortunate to learn from a lot of other coaches and staffs. And you look right at Minnesota, from the Tom Serratoris, Sandlin, Hastings, and Larson, so on and so forth. I was really blessed to come up around a bunch of really good people who do their job at a high level. And I think, there's not a hard answer within that. I think it's something you just got to trust your instinct. And when it comes to you, you got to act on it.
So I understand that when you played at St. Cloud, you stepped into that program as a walk-on. And, you finish your career there as the captain of the program. So when you talk about, character and perseverance, and I would imagine a lot of the character traits that you're going to need to have a successful start at Augustana, when you look back at your own playing journey, what were some of the fundamental ingredients that you think that you had that you want to see in the players that you bring on board next season?
Well, I think it was just opportunity. And I think that me going to St. Cloud, and I didn't have a whole lot of options, that
really
hence the walk on, and so I paid my own way, and to start, and coach just said he'd take care of me if I worked hard for him and became part of the team. And I just, it was like the old handshake agreement, which is so few and far between nowadays. But I connected with my teammates. There was some guys that I played with in Lincoln on that team. We were a lot alike, although we were pretty diverse in where we came from, where maybe our hometown was or our path to get there. But the guys on campus, they all went to work for each other. I think we believed in our coaching staff, and we believed that St. Cloud could really be successful on the national level. That we could push that bar forward. Now, when I was there, we were chasing the first ever NCAA tournament win. We'd been there a handful of times, and there had been Matt Cullen, there had been Mark Parrish and Hardigan and Duvie Westcott, so on and so forth. So really good players there who had made it to the national tournament. But our next step was to win that first tournament game. And we ended up getting the job done my senior year, which is something our group's really proud of and something we still celebrate to this day. But with our guys, to get back to your question, is I want guys that are really excited about the opportunity. They believe in what we can accomplish, and they believe that it's in their hands. That really they're the ones that hold the pen to how we write our first couple of chapters, and we'll decide how quickly our elevator goes up or down. We're the ones that'll be held accountable. But in the same sense, we're going to hold that piece of history forever, and that's a pretty cool thing, if you ask me.
That is, and that's, I mean, is that I guess slogan, they hold the pen. That's really interesting, and a great way to frame up this inaugural season. There's obviously some things you can't control. There's a lot that you can't control. You got to go and play the games. But when you look at where you're at today, what would a successful first season look like next year?
You know what? To be honest, and there's been a lot of people who've reached out and have and they have the intent is great, and they want to help me with here's what you're in for. But you know what? It is a little frustrating to hear it because I don't know that it's ever been done before. I don't know that, and I do know that this group that we're going to take to the ice with in year one is never ever in the history of hockey been put together, and it'll never be duplicated. So why don't we show up every day and go to work, and we'll be in control of how we prepare and how we perform on the weekends and how we hold each other accountable. And then in time, we'll look back and we'll determine what success was. We'll determine, based within our room, whether it was a success or it wasn't a success. So it's not really fair to put on the media and the press and everyone outside of our program is going to say, here's the wins, here's the losses, this is where they should be, here's where they're at. I think in starting a program, I think all we can really ask is for our group of guys to come in and give us their best every day. And we'll leave it all out there and we'll see where we're at the end of the year.
So, I mean, I can hear the passion in your voice, and right now, this is week one of NCAA coaches being able to step on the ice with their teams. While you do get to jump on the ice with the two players on campus, you got 365 days approximately till you can step on the ice with your squad, and that in itself is really unique too. Not a lot of coaches are in this situation. How do you take advantage of these next 12 months to, from a professional development standpoint, and how you continue to grow as a coach?
Well, I think it's a great time for me to learn from others. And I can tell you what, everything I have in my bag right now has been stolen from someone else. And I look forward to watching these teams compete this season. I really want to grow my knowledge of the game. And I'm excited to just watch other teams and watch their ups, watch their downs, talk to these coaches and how they manage everything. And I think it's a great opportunity to do it. Once you get in your routine as a coach during the season, it's so regimented, and you pour your heart and soul, and you work endless amount of time on the film. And you show up Monday, you break down the weekend, then you get going on teaching your guys, then you're getting ready for an opponent. So you don't always have a whole lot of time to talk to your colleagues and talk to others around college hockey or the National Hockey League, junior hockey, and pick their brain about what's working and what's not working. So I'm looking forward to that.
So when you get hired last spring, and as you said, in the grind of a season, you'd be watching a lot of tape. You'd be watching a lot of, particularly junior teams practice, and no question you're picking things up. But I imagine a lot of that's from strictly a scouting or a pre-scouting if it's in reference to a team. But once you get hired, I imagine you watched the NHL playoffs last year, and now you're looking at that through the lens of, I'm just trying to pick up little nuggets that I can use to build my program. Anything that you saw last year in the playoffs that you might borrow or that you could see becoming a trend in the game, be it this year or in the next?
I think the biggest thing, and it speaks to college hockey, and it's how the speed limit goes up from the regular season to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And this is one thing, and it's systematically, it's not what you're going to be looking for me. But what really connects with me is how these guys pour everything into it, how they're playing injured, how they're competing, how they're selling out. And just that's college hockey. College hockey every weekend is the NHL playoffs. We don't play enough games, so every game carries a huge weight to it. And that's the big thing for our guys and our teams, to take from that is that's how you win. It's just selfless hockey. What will you give for the guy next to you? How much does it mean to win at the end of the day? And that's why there's nothing better than watching the NCAA tournament in college and the NHL playoffs in the big leagues. And that's my favorite part about watching the playoffs.
So it sounds like you've got a bit of a perhaps a vision for how you want your team to play, and just that sort of all-in mentality. This is going to be the first time that you're going to kind of oversee practice and run a practice. What are going to be the key aspects in terms of how your team practices that are going to lend itself to how you want the group to play?
Well, I think, there's a couple things in it. And I've been, and you go back to Coach Motzko's teams at St. Cloud in Minnesota, and there's a theme there in terms of there's talent, and they want to play with the puck, and they want to get up and down, and they want to play in transition. But there's a respect paid to the grit and the toughness and the willingness to play defense and defend. You got to be willing to do the work to get the puck back and play in your own zone. And so as you build out your practices, you have to give these guys an opportunity to do both things. And I think you have to build your week of practice around playing with the puck, making passes, scoring goals, having a bit of creativity. But in the same breath, you also got to designate pieces of your week to competing. They can't just show up on the weekends and compete having not done it during the week. So my staff and I, we're looking forward to really getting a good plan together as we build out our week. And you know what? Every week's not the same. Okay, the ebbs and flows. You're constantly patching holes, and once you patch a hole, another leak springs. So there's an element of that, but I think by and large, and we do need to develop a consistent opportunity for our guys to feel what it's like to play with the puck, but they also have to work within the week and compete.
So that's interesting, and I mentioned before we hit record here that this past weekend I was down in Minneapolis for the Minnesota hockey directors conference, and former Brown coach Roger Gurlow was out there giving a presentation, and we got stuck in a conversation, and he was talking about how in practice he's really come to appreciate the importance of starting every drill forcing players in some capacity to have to get the puck, whether that's just a warm-up flow drill where they got to maybe lift a stick and steal it from the player behind them, but always having that element. Can you give any examples of how you might integrate that grit into practice and forcing players to compete without the puck?
No, and I think Grillo is going down a great path in terms of winning the puck. And as everyone knows, it's a series of one-on-one battles when you break down our game to the bare bones. And I like to do that as well. And I think too that more and more as you talk about transition and getting up and down and winning pucks, that it has a little bit of everything. That it might be a 30-second rep, and wrapped up in that rep, you might need to backtrack, win a puck. You might need to communicate a coverage, and then when you get that puck back or you win that puck, then you transition to offense and you're able to make plays. But somebody's also pursuing you. Maybe that next line is then hunting you down, and it goes back and forth. So it's not just free wheeling 5-on-0. There's more of a game-like pressure where you're playing with the puck, but you have back pressure, or you're back pressuring, trying to win that puck and then transitioning into offense.
Coaches ask me all the time how they can get more accomplished during their practice. My answer, huddle. Here's why. Because the more you can teach and educate off the ice, the more progress you can make on the ice. Huddle is the leading video and data solution for ice hockey in the world. Huddle delivers simple yet powerful video review tools with desktop and mobile apps, enabling entire teams to review, study, and share video anywhere and at any time. Plus, with Huddle Assist, you can quickly get access to a full suite of game stats along with your film breakdown, so you can analyze both your team's and individual player performance, ensuring you provide objective feedback. Right now, listeners of the Glassnote podcast can get a great discount on Huddle products. To learn more, check out huddle.com/the coaches site for details on this exclusive offer. That's HUDL.com/the coaches site. You mentioned that Bob Motzko has had a significant role both as a coach and then as a mentor and somebody that you worked underneath for several years at both St. Cloud and the University of Minnesota. And, we hear today the importance of relationships. And I think that's always, it's a two-way street that players have to do their part to develop good relationships with their coaches and make, the right impression. But at the same time, coaches can't take it for granted. They gotta invest in those relationships as well. What have you learned about how to develop quality relationships with your players?
It's time. It's time. And you have to be committed to being vulnerable, to being truthful with these guys, but you have to commit a large amount of time to being available in whatever it may be. And I think a lot of that work is done. It's not always in hockey talk. I think the most valuable conversations that go the longest way in developing that rapport and trust with your players is just talking about life, talking about where they come from, where they want to go, how they're going to get there. These guys are coming, a lot of them they're leaving home for the first time. They're truly vulnerable, and it's a big step in their development as a hockey player, but as more, even more so as a person. And they're trying to figure it out, and it doesn't always go great. Sometimes there is that adversity, and you got to help them through it. And it's not you always talking to them. It's you do a lot of listening, and you're just there for them.
I imagine you've got a pretty good sounding board in your father, Bruce, who himself was a captain in the NCAA with Providence. Is he someone you're picking up the phone and calling, through this process and getting advice from? And I imagine just, throughout your career, both as a player and a coach.
He has been, and he coached me in high school, and he played out at Providence College, played for Lou Lamoriello, legendary Lou Lamoriello. Wow. And he had a blast out there, and then came back and ended up being my high school coach. And there was a time from high school to junior hockey where we kind of agreed, like, we'll talk about hockey if I want to talk about hockey, but he was never waiting after the game, upset with me or wanting to, tell me his thoughts, because he knew if he started in, it was going in a bad direction. So, and that carried through college, and he truly was just a fan. He was a proud parent. He had fun with the parents in college. When I graduated, I think he felt like he graduated again too. He was sad that it was all over, because we had a great 4-year run together there. But on the coaching side of things, I've most enjoyed kind of listening to him, and he resets me, because we're so competitive and we're always trying to find the next best thing and a competitive edge. And he always brings it back to, like, why are we coaching in the first place? And that's him. He was in special education for several years. He's now retired. No way. But as a high school coach, it was always about the kids and trying to give back to the game, and offering others a similar experience to what he had. And I think that's why I'm here. It's not just because it's a job. It's because I want to give back to the game. And I had a fabulous career as a player. It formed a lot of who I am today. And I want to afford some of these other guys the same opportunity and allow them to chase their dreams.
What was the experience like growing up in small town Minnesota playing high school hockey? And I bring it up as I said, we were just down in Minnesota this past weekend, and I certainly had an appreciation for high school hockey in the state of Minnesota. but being around people for, a couple of days, hearing the stories, hearing the passion. And, I haven't been to a game yet. I'm hoping to check that box later this year at the state tournament, but how unique of an experience was that? And, just the opportunity again. I think you mentioned your hometown was about 10,000 people. What did you take away from that as a young man?
It was incredible. Obviously, we don't know anything but that growing up in Minnesota.
Fair,
and when you get to junior hockey, you're quickly aware that there's some players in Michigan that play this sport too, and there's also guys in Europe that are pretty good. And so it's a humbling experience once you dive into the post high school career. But when you're in high school, you feel like a mini celebrity. Your classmates and people from around town come to the games. They all know what you're up to. They celebrate the wins. They're down in the losses, and everyone's just together in that. And you have the unique ability to play with guys who you've played with since you were like 5 years old. And then you grow up and you always dream of putting on the sweater for the high school team. And then you get that opportunity, and you're just there's so much pride involved. And it's something bigger than you. It's about the program. It's about the community. It's about the alumni, and everything that goes into it. And you just want that one chance to play at the XL Energy Center. And so few get it. I never got it. My dad never got it. And it's like the one thing that stays with you forever. You might have had a great high school career, but if you never made it to the state tournament, it just wasn't as special as you wanted it to be. So to see these kids at the state tournament every year, to see the fans, to see 18,000, 19,000 at XL Energy Center.
It's wild.
It's wild, and the whole town's there. And that's it's a pretty special time of year. And those, they kind of roll their eyes when they hear about it from outside the state. But when they're actually in the X, it all makes sense. And they're like, whew, we wish we had that.
Well, it was funny. So my eyes got opened up a little bit. So Glenn Andreessen is the executive director of Minnesota Hockey. And we were just chatting, and I said, man, I'd love to get back down here for the state tournament. And he goes, well, if you come down here, I can probably get you some tickets. And I said, get me some tickets. There's like 18,000 seats. Like, I'll get tickets. He's like, oh, no, you won't. Like, there's no deals. This thing is sold out. It's jammed to the rafters. And that was I thought that was pretty cool. When you go recruiting now, and you're going to a rink, do you have maybe a process? Because, I sense that, there was a time probably when you were being recruited, there wasn't, the various video platforms where you could log in and watch a player play in advance, or, I think just all the tools we have to sort of get a really good feel for who the prospects are. You had to just go into the rink with an open mind and see who stood out. And I sense there might be a bit of a benefit to that, and not getting caught up in the rankings and, maybe, the various lists that everybody else is following. How do you go and identify the players that, perhaps not only are going to fit your program in terms of how you want to show up on the ice, but as you said earlier, but how you want your players to show up off the ice?
Well, and I think a lot of it, and that we put a lot of time into it. And in my situation here, or in past situations, you spend a large amount of your week on the phone and talking to coaches, talking to people in the community, other players, and trying to put yourself in the right field where you're hunting. And then once you kind of get in that field and you're watching hockey, you can identify who's a fit. Who's a fit from a talent, a skill perspective, how they play. And we've never recruited under, hey, we're going to recruit X player, and then we're going to mold them into what we want them to be. We're going to go get a player who already kind of fits that mold, and we're going to try to make them better. Okay, we're gonna work on a few of the things he needs to work on, but we're going to really grow his strengths. So he already kind of fits the on-ice side of things. But that's 10% of what we do. I think the rest of the 90 is getting to know about what's this kid all about. Is this kid, like I talked about culture, is this kid that's going to connect with our players on campus? Is he going to connect with us as coaches? is his vision and his approach to the game similar to the guys we already have on campus. So they can just move forward. They have a much more easy time of coming together and pulling that rope in the same direction. And that's done through really anybody that's been in contact with that individual, from youth hockey to high school hockey or in the classroom. I mean, there's so many people, and you can't talk to enough people and accrue enough information when you're making that decision.
So let's use your decor as an example. So you were from just going off your elite prospects profile, a two-way offensive-minded defenseman. When you look at how you put that, your decor together, what are some of the ingredients and that you hope to see show up on your roster, be it from a stylistically how individual players play, perhaps from a size perspective? How do you want to put that together?
Well, I'm not as hard and fast on this is what it looks like from a physical standpoint, and that's one of my greatest mentors is Mike Gibbons, who's up at Bemidji.
Yeah,
and tremendous defensive mind, just a great guy, and a one heck of a recruiter, one of the best there's ever been. And for us, and as I was brought up, is you need champions. Okay, you need champion kids. You need ultimate competitors. And if you look back to some of the decors that him and I were a part of at St. Cloud, almost everybody on that decor was a captain at some time.
Interesting.
They led at the junior level, at the high school level. They didn't wear a letter. They were the captain. And I think what that spoke to is when the game's on the line, when everything's going crazy in the world, they were the guy that wanted to step in front and wear the bullet. And they felt comfortable when that pressure rose. Now Jack Ashan's not very big. He's tough. He's one heck of a hockey player, but he fit that mold. And then we had Will Borgen, and we had Jimmy Schultz, and we had John Lazat. Now these guys, no one's like the other, and they go from 5'8". Jack will argue that to 6'3". But we felt like at any point in time when that game was on the line that they could be on the ice, and you know what? They all wanted to be on the ice. There was no one hiding on the bench. I can assure you that. So I think there's definitely obviously some components into the size and length and a puck mover, a true defender, and you kind of piece that puzzle together. But I think at the core of all of it is the competitor in there.
Love it. That's a great perspective. So, previously you're at the University of Minnesota, Big Ten program in the middle of the city. I sense that, just about every kid in the state aspires to play there. And you also have the pull of bringing in some high-end players from out of state. I would think from I guess just purely a career perspective, like it's a pretty good spot to be in. And, there's no reason to jump at another opportunity to be a head coach or go to another school unless it's the right fit. Why was Augustana the right fit for you?
I think when I moved from St. Cloud to Minnesota, I knew it was the right step, and I knew it's something I need professionally in my career. And when Augustana came around, it wasn't that I was going to chase this job. And I think it played to my advantage because I was just me. I think what made the decision for me was meeting the leadership down here on campus, from President Stephanie to the athletic director, Josh Morton, and all the members of the committee. That was a big piece for me because they made me feel like when I arrive on campus that they're going to have my back. And then I got to meet some of the other coaches around campus, and it was a real selfless. They just made me feel like, hey, like we're all together in this, and we're all gonna lift each other up, and whether we're winning or losing, we're gonna try to make each other better, and we're gonna do it together, and it's about people. And I just felt really good about that. I felt really good about the hockey side with the plan they have in place. Obviously, a gorgeous arena going up just across the street. The city of Sioux Falls is one of the fastest growing communities in North America. I mean, in the last 20 years, 100,000 people have moved here. They've done 5.1 billion in residential construction. This is the place to be right now, and people are just flocking to come to Sioux Falls and be a part of everything going on in this community. And for my family and myself and where we're at, it was just a no-brainer.
When you were hired, Josh Morton, the athletic director at Augustana, made a comment that to have the ultimate success, we need to do it with somebody who's humble enough to be a good teammate. I thought that was such an interesting comment when it comes to hiring a coach. Where does that humbleness come from? Is that something that, it was bred into you from just, through your father and growing up in a small town? Is that just maybe some of the mentors that you've had from a coaching perspective? Because that, clearly was pretty impactful.
Well, you might have to ask some others. I guess it's, for me, it's just how I've always been. I think I'm a real believer that you don't arrive anywhere without so many other good people. I've been blessed, fortunate, so many things along my journey, and it honestly has been my whole life, from the youth coaches and family. Just I'm fortunate to come up in a real close knit, strong, valued family. Married my girlfriend from my sophomore year. It's in high school, so we've been together forever. We're just we're two small town people that I think just really enjoy being around others, and know that all of this is not about us. This is so much bigger than us. We're just fortunate enough to be where we are in this moment, and we don't know what the future holds, but we're going to go put our head down and go to work as we always have, and hopefully good things will come.
So when you go home tonight, you're sitting around the dinner table, you got your wife, your 3 kids, you're talking about the evolution of the program. What kind of advice are your kids giving to you about how you build a team, or perhaps what the new rink's going to look like, how you're going to set up the dressing room? I imagine it must be a thrill for them as well.
Well, you know what? If I can actually get them inside from playing with their friends out in the neighborhood, that'll be the first big step. But my son has all the answers. I can tell you that. He's an expert on everything from baseball to football to hockey. But we don't do a lot of hockey talk. We're sometimes I got to tell my wife where we are or who we're playing, but we're just a simple family. We enjoy hanging out on the couch and watching a few cartoons or a movie at night, and then get them up to bed, and then just start the next day over with getting them ready for school.
So you mentioned your son plays baseball, and again, we were talking off the top here, and you touched on that you played football in high school, and I thought this was really interesting. Just going back to, I guess, the Minnesota model. When I look at college hockey rosters, and of course every website has kind of the bio on each player, and it gets to the part of what they did before they got to college. It almost seems like it's so consistent that you have these kids that play different sports in high school and had they were multi-sport athletes. And I'm not saying that's exclusive to kids from Minnesota, but it certainly seems like it's maybe a lot more consistent. How important was that for you? And as someone that's putting a team together and looking for the best athletes today, how important is that opportunity for kids to be multi-sport athletes?
All right, and I'll tell any kid, it's if you can't play enough sports, from the athlete perspective, in terms of just being diverse in your ability to make different movements. But I think there's a big part of it too, of being in different locker rooms, being amongst different players. How you can kind of transform a room from one sport to the next, and with different people in it. How you can lead in different ways. I think it teaches you a lot. I've said it a million times. Like, my best sports memory has nothing to do with hockey. We won the state football tournament.
No kidding.
In 2001. And that was the ultimate sports memory for me. And as a coach, we won, regionals and went to Frozen Fours, but at a personal level, winning the state football tournament in the old Metrodome against Mankato East was as good as it ever got for me as an athlete. And
no kidding.
And we, I probably still enjoy it a little too much. I got the highlight film that's now been transferred to DVD, and but again, to relive those memories and just it was awesome. It was awesome to win a championship in any sport is incredible, and for me, I got to win one in football, and it's just something that you carry with you forever.
What position were you?
Well, I was running back, and I was a long snapper, and I played a little bit of D-back. So we actually won the state championship on a field goal, last-second field goal, which we don't kick a lot of field goals in high school, especially in 4A ball. So there was a lot going on. They tried to freeze the kicker, but I guess now I know that they're freezing there's three parts to the whole kicking process. So the holder and the snapper, we're all getting frozen out there. But we made it all work.
That's awesome. So, having that football background and just, being involved in the collegiate game, especially, I look at, say the University of Minnesota, I follow PJ Fleck really closely, and he's somebody that seems to have a great mindset and is a great leader. Have you had the opportunity to connect with coaches outside of hockey, and whether those are through personal relationships or just somebody you admire from afar? Any other coaches that you look to for your own inspiration?
Yeah, I of course I do. And then there's Flint Machenbacher and Rob Nielsen, who were my coaches back in high school football in Detroit Lakes. Stay in communication with them here and there throughout the year, and they're always fired up to know what I'm up to. And I haven't met PJ very often. I know him and Coach Motzko are pretty close, but follow along in his messaging and how he builds his programs and how he connects people. And but even down here at Augustana, there's a pretty impressive group of coaches, and from coaches of the year to championship teams. And I just feel so fortunate because they come check up on me and, hey, young guy, how you doing? Just breathe and put their arm around me. And it's we don't talk X's and O's, but we talk team building, and then we just talk about ourselves and our families, and that goes a long way too.
Looking at the football background, and I admittedly, probably especially this time of year, I love football and love the college game in particular. But I think the thing that I find really fascinating is just that concept, from a coach's perspective, you got to manage such a large roster, not just a large roster where every position is so specialized in terms of the individual skills required to play it. And you not only have to communicate with players, but probably more importantly, you got to communicate with a staff and make sure that the message that you're giving them is the same message that's going on to the players. How have you thought about building your staff, and what sort of qualities that you're looking for?
Well, and I can tell you my first step and my biggest recruit was Andy Bischetto, who moved his whole family. He's 3 kids and his wife Stacy. They moved from the East Coast all the way to the Midwest. First time living in the Midwest. And just like with my players, I wanted believers. That's what all of our coaches want. They want to believe in what we're doing here. They want to believe that whatever it may be, it can happen here. Whether you want to win a championship or go on to the NHL or become a doctor, that this is the place it can happen, and it's for you. And he was all in. He was right on board from the get-go. He's a builder. If you look at his track record, back to taking a 1-win Division III team on to being a nationally competitive and playing for a championship, taking a last-place Niagara team and making them competitive and relevant, and then Colgate, what he's done there. He's an incredible person, and he values relationship and people above all else, but he's not afraid to good old fashioned get out there and work, and he thinks that's the way it should be. Like you go to work, you work hard, and you reap the rewards at the end of the day. So his loyalty and just him as a person, and I think that's a big part of the people we're looking for. And he's going to be out on the road finding just those guys.
You mentioned that you got a new rink, and I've seen I went down a rabbit hole. I saw like the university, they've got the little webcam, and you can see the beams going up and everything, but then you see the renderings of what the finished product's going to look like. It's unbelievable. Do you get insight into how that's going to be set up and what sort of facilities your players are going to have access to? Because that's pretty cool.
No, and that was the big thing is the players area, from the weight room to the hydrotherapy tubs to the players lounge, the wet stall, the dry stall, shooting room, all that stuff. That was kind of what I got most excited about. But part of those meetings, and they were long meetings, was, the interiors and the carpet and the seats and the Zambonis and everything like that. Which when you're on hour 4 of a 6-hour meeting, you're like, what the heck am I doing? But
so you got like a minor and interior decorating now, basically.
Yeah, no, but when you look back, it's like, what an incredible opportunity, and not a lot of guys get to do it. So now that the meetings are done, and the rink's going up, it's coming out of the ground. It's a pretty cool thing to know that you've at least been able to see how it all came together. And you got to realize, my first day, I've been here about 120 days. And my first day, there was a pond with cattails and ducks swimming around on where the rink was supposed to go. So they took the pond out, moved it across the road. And then a storm came, and it knocked over about 5 power poles, and the pond filled back up. So as soon as we got started, we essentially ended up back at ground zero. So now that I can look out of my window and see beams and concrete coming out of the ground, is pretty cool, and we're just excited about how quickly we can get this thing built.
So, I mentioned before we got rolling here, this past Sunday, I went to the Minnesota Vikings home opener against the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, a big rivalry game. The stadium they've got there in Minnesota is just so over the top. It's not even funny. But you got the Vikings of Minneapolis, then you got the Vikings of Augustana. They've got the skull chant. They've got a big giant horn. They got a guy that plays a gigantic drum. Do you borrow any of that and inject that into the game night atmosphere and as you look to build some traditions?
Oh, you know what? With the excitement down here, I think everything's on the table. I've heard that there is going to be a horn similar to the one you saw at US Bank. Now,
unreal.
I don't know where you find one of those. I don't know.
Sure, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, but so there's a lot of cool, exciting stuff like that. I don't know if there's enough skins and furs to put together the cloak that the Viking wears at the football games, but we're you know what? There's so much excitement. There's so many people that want to be a part of it, and they're within that. There's new ideas, and I'm excited. I'm in charge of the hockey side of things, but I'm at the same. I'm going to be looking around in the crowd and probably enjoying some of the things as our fans come in and have a blast.
That's great. And just to wrap up here, Garrett, you've got, you mentioned you've been in town for about 120 days. Again, we touched on, you've got about 365 to go until the season, next season comes around. You're going to spend obviously a lot of time recruiting, putting your team together. Where else do you direct your focus between now and then to make sure that your program is ready to roll when the puck drops next season?
Well, I think, as you touched on, the most important piece is getting the right players, the right people on campus. That's where we're going to designate most of our time. I think you do need to put some thought into the administrative side, the academic side, and making sure that the student athlete experience and those pieces that are part of that are in place for when our students arrive. Okay, when our players arrive, they have to feel like this is what they're here for. That this is what they're expecting, and they have everything they need from an academic, an athletic, and a social, emotional point of view. That it's all there for them to have success and grow and really be themselves here in Sioux Falls at Augustana. and beyond that, I think it's just continuing to build out our staff and all those things that go into it, and away we go.
That's awesome, Garrett. Well, listen, it's been great catching up with you. What an exciting opportunity. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to come visit you in Sioux Falls and see that game night atmosphere at the new rink. I encourage everybody, just do a quick Google search, go check it out. They got something really cool that they're building down in Sioux Falls, and best of luck the rest of the way, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Look forward to our next chat.
The Glass and Out podcast is a The Coach's Site production.